Although America is the richest and most powerful nation in history, its ascent to the top was actually rather surprising. In actuality, the majority of North America was overlooked for over a century following its discovery. This chart was created just prior to Christopher Columbus' discovery of America. No one knew that the island the Vikings claimed to have found was actually a continent. Columbus therefore thought that by sailing west, he could discover a trading route to Asia. In reality, though, he discovered a few islands in the Caribbean Sea. Columbus thought he was near India even though he didn't discover the spices he was hoping for. He thus summoned the indigenous Indians, collected some treats, and returned them to the Spanish king and queen. "Your Majesties, hello, I recently returned from Asia. Fantastic. The spices, where are they? They have a ton of gold, but we haven't found the spices yet. Columbus, you're speaking now. Return. Tell them everyone to return with that gold and to become Christians." The Portuguese had found that they could sail around Africa to reach Asia a few years before to Columbus claiming the West Indies for Spain. As a result, Spain and Portugal drew a line straight down the center of the map, agreeing that Portugal would own all non-Christian territory on this side, and Spain would own all non-Christian territory on the other. As a result, the Spanish began to conquer their part of the world while the Portuguese traveled to Asia and established a vast trading empire. Here, where there was an abundance of gold, silver, and people, were all the fascinating regions of the Americas. That's where the Spanish ended up. In fact, the Spanish actually sent an expedition into North America in 1539, but they largely disregarded all these worthless territories up here since they failed to locate gold and silver. While the Spanish were still exploring the Caribbean islands, the English really sent an explorer to North America. The English waited over a century before attempting to colonize America, but that was 16 years before the Spanish found Florida. In 1585, the first colony of England was founded in Roanoke, North Carolina. However, that colony vanished inexplicably that same year as England became preoccupied with a war with Spain. At Jamestown, they made another attempt, and this time it was successful. The Pilgrims arrived in Plymouth next to each other. The Pilgrims were devout Christians who forbade immoral activities like gambling and Christmas celebrations. Before long, the East Coast was covered in British colonies as a result of the massive influx of immigrants to the United States. In the meantime, the French were occupied with seizing every piece of territory in the center of North America. It's time for a conflict to determine who actually owns what in America in 1754. About 60,000 people live in New France, so they band together with several Indian tribes to support them in battle. The French and Indian War got its name because of this. Over 1 million people live in the British colonies, which collaborate with some Indian tribes. Who do you believe prevailed? Yes, it is correct. The French were defeated by the British. The map needed to be redrawn after a major conflict in Europe ended at the same period. In order to prevent Britain from obtaining half of Louisiana, France surrendered it to Spain before to the end of the war. Following the war, France was forced to cede the other half of Louisiana to Britain. Canada had to be given to Britain by France as well. Britain had a lot of land in America now, but they also needed money because they had spent a lot on the battle. Colonies, are you aware of the costly battle we assisted you in winning? Yes, I appreciate your assistance. Yes, no issue. By the way, in order to cover the cost of all the assistance we provide, we will begin collecting an enormous amount of taxes. What? You never assist us. We are the ones who are constantly assisting you. And if we are denied the right to vote, how can you tax us? The colonists' dissatisfaction over the additional taxes escalated into a battle, which then developed into a revolution. The United States of America was founded on July 4, 1776, when the Americans declared their independence from Great Britain. Not exactly. Before the Americans won their fight of independence, 5 more years would pass. They also faced a new issue after gaining their freedom. The government they had established was a total disaster. The 13 colonies, which were merely connected in name, had effectively become 13 autonomous nations. The new country was collapsing quickly. Thus, the Founding Fathers drafted a constitution and established a brand new, functional federal government. 9 states ratified the new constitution, making it official. Additionally, George Washington was chosen as the nation's first president in 1789. However, the USA was only this large, and Spain owned all of this territory. How then did America acquire additional land? A man by the name of Napoleon took control of France and began to conquer Europe. Napoleon struck an agreement with Spain to return Louisiana to France because he also desired to establish an empire in America. However, the Americans were terrified of what Napoleon might do if he took control of the Mississippi River, which they needed to transport commodities to and from other locations. Thus, America requested that France sell them New Orleans. You are aware of my ambitions to build a vast empire in North America, but I have to invade Britain immediately. Once we vanquish the British, we can establish our empire in America. However, if the Americans find out about our intentions for America, they will back Britain, which might be disastrous. However, if we sell Louisiana to the Americans, Britain will become ours and they will be our lifelong buddies. The Americans just want New Orleans, and selling our largest area would be absurd. Enough, I've decided. We'll sell everything. The funds will be used to finance our conflict with Britain. Thus, Louisiana was purchased by America for $15 million. America's population was nearly doubling every 20 years, thus it was excellent that the country had recently doubled in size. The typical American family at the time had 7 children, and each child needed a place to dwell. As a result, many Americans relocated to the West, where there was an abundance of unclaimed land. Is this land owned by anyone? Not, of course. Excellent, since I now own it. However, these areas are my hunting grounds. That is not correct English. You're meant to claim that these areas served as my hunting grounds. When America purchased Florida from Spain in 1819, it was decided that this line would serve as the border between New Spain and the United States. After just 2 years, Mexico gained independence from Spain, giving the United States a new neighbor. Mexico's northern regions were hard to govern and had a small population. Thus, the Mexican government extended an invitation to Americans to relocate to Texas. The Texans soon broke away from Mexico and established their own sovereign nation after these settlers swiftly outnumbered the Mexicans. We want to join the USA, YEHAW. Do you own slaves? Indeed, we do, and we take great pride in it. I apologize. No more slave states are necessary. Hello, everyone. This is ours now that I am president. The United States decided to allow the Republic of Texas to become a member of the Union in 1845. A conflict with Mexico resulted from disagreements over the Texas border. Following the conflict, the United States gave Mexico $15 million and seized the northern regions of Mexico that President Polk had desired. 5 years later, the United States paid $10 million to purchase another plot of property from Mexico. In the meantime, the British consented to give the Americans all of the Oregon area below this line in exchange for the British having everything above it. America already stretched from sea to sea after just 50 years of incredible luck and one bloody conflict with Mexico. There was nowhere else to go but to say hello, Uncle Sam. In the midst of the ocean, I discovered an island. Can I make a claim for the United States? Well, that might come in handy during World War II. Does anyone reside there? No, sir. Is there bird droppings all over it? Indeed, sir. Son, congratulations. You are in the United States. To be honest, sir, I wouldn't refer to this as soil. The Guano Islands Act is still in effect, by the way. Go find an island to live on if you're sick of paying excessive rent. Whoa, everything is fantastic. When word got out that gold had been found shortly after the Americans took control of California, a huge number of individuals flocked to the state to assist in the gold's extraction. There was an abundance of free farmland up in the Oregon area. There was peace everywhere, and America was prospering. However, the issue of slavery was a major internal issue. Slavery was prohibited in the northern states, and many believed it to be a terrible evil that had to be eradicated. Slavery played a significant role in the economy of the South. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, the decades-long debate among Americans over slavery reached a breaking point. In the South, a lot of people thought that Lincoln would outlaw slavery. As a result, the majority of the slave states broke away from the U.S. to form their own nation. This resulted in a massive civil war in which many people perished. The North prevailed, the slaves were set free, and the United States was reunited. I regret learning about President Lincoln's murder. Yes, I was stabbed by another assassin the same evening, but I managed to survive. That is awful. Even though it's awful that you were stabbed, I'm relieved that you made it out alive. The Tsar incidentally wants Alaska to go to the United States. What is the price you can afford? I believe we can accomplish 5 million, possibly 5.5 million, but not more. What about 7 million? Yes, of course. Fantastic. I'm approved for 7 million. Tomorrow we can sign the pact. Will we be able to achieve it tonight? I ought to have requested more funds. Fantastic. America now owns yet another sizable portion of territory. Only a few tropical islands are needed now. Look at that, hey. The Hawaiian Islands have been taken over by certain American businessmen who are requesting that the U.S. annex them. However, the U.S. president declined. He felt that America should be a law-abiding, just country that never abuses its enormous strength to exploit the weak. Others, however, were concerned that if America did not intervene in Hawaii's affairs, another superpower, such as Japan or Germany, would seize the islands and use them as a base from which to strike America in a future conflict. Should America prioritize its own interests or keep its mouth shut? Something was brewing in Cuba, and it wasn't coffee, so America's policy of staying out of other countries' disputes was about to be put to the test. A fight for independence was raging in Cuba. Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines remained Spanish colonies, but nearly all of Spain's other colonies had previously gained independence from Spain following the American and French revolutions. American newspapers frequently covered the Cuban War of Independence, and the majority of Americans supported the rebels. Following the mystery explosion that sank an American vessel in 1898, the U.S. threatened to force Spain to leave Cuba. In response, Spain declared war on the United States. The remainder of the Spanish Empire that Christopher Columbus had started was essentially destroyed when the U.S. swiftly took control of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Hawaii, which was developing into a significant naval base, was also annexed by the U.S. during the Spanish-American War. Theodore Roosevelt, who was young and full of energy, suddenly became president after the president was shot after the war. "Hello, Colombia, this is where we would like to construct a canal. Yes, please just give us $10 million. It's an agreement. In fact, we had second thoughts. The canal cannot be built." "What? But we came to an agreement. I apologize." "Welcome to the Club of Nations, Panama. This is where we plan to construct a canal." "Yes, please." Roosevelt amassed the second largest navy in the world while serving as president, and he exploited this formidable fleet to sway international affairs. The Panama Canal, which the Americans completed in 1914, made it possible for the formidable U.S. Navy to swiftly travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. World War I had just started, and America had emerged as a major global force. Please subscribe to let me know if you would want to see more videos like this one, and don't forget to check out the next one right here. I'll include notes and explanations in the description if you're interested in learning more about American history. I'll see you later.